Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Jen with Next Wave Business Coaching, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Think Tank Thursday, which is where I come on and offer business strategies and tips to get you thinking about your business, how you can grow your business, streamline your business, and improve those profits. Today, I'm really excited. I have a special guest. And before I introduce her, I just want to talk about one of the pillars. I go through a 6-pillar program to help small businesses build a better business. And one of the pillars is foundation. I think it's so important to have a strong foundation. How can you build something that's going to be resilient and successful if you don't have a strong foundation? And one of the pieces of that, there's many pieces I go through, but one of them is making sure you're protected and that you have the right insurance and legal and everything in place. So today we're going to dive into the commercial insurance. Now, I know I owned a business for 20 years. I know when it comes to commercial insurance, you think, okay, I need it when I start my business, when I launch my business. You meet with somebody, you sign up, and then you go about running your business and you don't give it much thought. And what we want to challenge you with today is you really need to think about when to revisit that. As your business evolves, as the world evolves and new threats come into the world, you need to be making sure your original policy is keeping up with you. So that's why I thought it was so important. And I'm so excited to invite Angela Shallow with Farmers Insurance Shallow Agency to Think Tank Thursday today. Thank you, Angela, for joining us and welcome.
Thanks, Jen. I really appreciate you having me. I'm so excited to be here and be sharing some of my knowledge about commercial insurance. And hopefully, our listeners will be able to hear something that they can take home and really use to help them move forward with improving that security of their business.
I agree. I completely agree. So let's dive into this idea of, I'm sure you see it over and over. As a small business, you start your business, you get a commercial insurance policy, and then you go on. What is it that you want business owners to think about as they are growing their business, as they're in their business a couple years down the road, as they're evolving? What is it that you really want them to think about and know about keeping themselves protected?
Yeah, absolutely. So the just as you were saying about insurance being part of the foundation, I agree with that completely. The verbiage I use is I tell people that their insurance is part of their overall financial stability for their business because one unpaid claim could wash away the profits that they've been working toward, or the investment, right? We invest our time, our money, our effort, or our blood, our sweat, and our tears into our business. And so we want to protect that investment. Insurance is a good way to do that. Statistically speaking, we know that most businesses close in their first 5 years, but it's not real often that people really look at why. Well, one of the leading causes is an unpaid claim. Most small businesses do have a loss that could have been covered by insurance in those first few years. And of those businesses, 75% are at least underinsured, if not uninsured altogether. But if of the ones who are properly covered and that loss is covered by their insurance, their risk of going out of business goes down to a mere 17%. That's a huge swing. So I always tell people, you want to be part of this 17% that survives. And in order to do that, you need this insurance in place.
Wow, that is huge. I never even thought about it from looking at, you're right. In the business coaching realm, I hear all the time that businesses, the statistics of surviving the first 5 years are not great. It's, 1 out of 2. But I love how you also bring up the point that insurance could be a piece of that. I think a lot of us go into thinking, oh, that's not going to happen to me, right? I think, we all kind of fall into that realm. And also, what would you just say to someone who is maybe afraid to write a claim because they're afraid their rates are going to go up? Or, is there ways to know if it is something that can be a claim versus not? I think sometimes we question ourselves as business owners whether that is something that really should be brought up. Would you say that's just having a good relationship with your agent? And, what else can they kind of think about going forward with that?
Yeah, you're right. Having a good relationship with your agent is key here, because you should question whether or not to put in that claim. And if you call your 1-800 number, then when you're asking questions about the scenario, really what you're doing is you're submitting a claim, and whether or not there's ever a payout, that's a claim on your record. And so if you can call an agent instead that's going to have a relationship with you, have a conversation with you to help you determine whether or not it's worth it to put in that claim, that's going to be really helpful. I like to look at a few different things, but we look at, what is the estimated cost of this versus the deductible? Is it worth it there? And is this something where if we don't put in a claim and get it resolved immediately, are you going to be out of business, or even just unable to work for a set amount of time until you save that money up to maybe buy that piece of equipment, for example? Or is it something where we can still do our job, and we're still bringing in the profits that we need to bring as a business, and this is something where we can maybe go a little bit slower and maybe get some estimates up front first and things like that, and make that decision slowly. So I try and ask the key questions of, is this immediate, or is this something that can wait? If it can wait, let's get the estimates and then really weigh it out.
When you were saying that, it brought up a memory for me when I owned my retail bakery. We had a storm come through and the power outage knocked out power for about 4 days.
Yes.
Well, we moved as much freezer goods and, perishable goods out of the fridge and freezer that we could into friends and families. But I ended up throwing away a lot of inventory. And of course, the loss of income that was coming in those 4 days that we were closed. I never filed a claim. And looking back at that, if I would have had knowledge from, you and an agent that I had a relationship with, I probably would have. But I guess I just assumed, oh, suck it up. It's part of doing business. And, now looking back, that was a mistake on my part. So,
Yeah, when claim time comes, we tend to use the emotional part of our mind to make decisions. But really, as much as it takes a little more intention, it's the time to use the logical part of our mind. And so had you called me in that scenario, we would have done some math. Okay, how much money are we losing per day by being closed? Keeping in mind there's a time deductible for that too. So you probably had to be closed 2 to 3 days prior to that kicking in anyway, and you were only closed 4. So and then how much are we really losing in that inventory? We may not have come to the conclusion to put in a claim in that scenario, but how would we have determined that? We would run the numbers, we would have done the math.
right. Which looking back would have been a much better financial decision. So one thing that is coming up a lot in the news lately is this cyber liability, hacking, all this stuff that we've been exposed to, when we watch the fuel be hacked and all that. Is this something as small business owners we need to be concerned about, aware? Is this a conversation that's coming up more now in the insurance? And where would you guide us with that?
Yes, by far the majority of my clients, I recommend to purchase cyber liability as part of their insurance package. Depending on what they do and what carrier they're with, that might be a rider on their existing policy, or it might be a whole separate policy. But if you have data on your clients, you need to be buying cybersecurity to protect that data. Well, you have to do other things to protect the data. The cybersecurity is after the fact. So if that breach does happen, which it could, I mean, we think about some of the really big companies who have so much in place for protection and still get breached. You have to do your due diligence here. And if you do have a breach, you have a legal obligation to notify everyone whose data has been compromised. You have to do so through legal channels, and that's very costly. And so the first thing that insurance needs to do is cover your cost of notifying people. But then you also risk the possibility of lawsuits, and so you want an additional amount to be able to meet that need as well.
Oh, that's so good to know. Because I think, we often just think about insurance as the tangibles, like we're just, covering that inventory that like I talked about. But we also need to be covering people and liability, right? Is there anything else that we need to be worrying about, or are those the three buckets you would recommend?
That's the way I describe it. Yes, is we need to cover your tangibles, your liability, and your people. And so a couple examples for each. Tangibles. The very first commercial client I ever wrote, sweetest gentleman, he came into my office and he needed insurance for his lawnmower. That was what he was focused on, was the lawnmower. And when somebody's so hyper focused in on something like that, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh boy, I'm going to have to try and convince this person of their liability needs, which thankfully in his case was simple. When I explained it to him, he grasped it and bought into covering his liability needs, which I really appreciated. But when I looked at his current policy, this person who came in telling me what matters is my lawnmower, my $8,000 lawnmower, if something happens to it, I am out of business tomorrow. I looked at his current policy and it only had $1,000 coverage for that. And so here he is, he knows what's most important to him, and it still didn't have the coverage that he thought it had. And I see that a lot because insurance is almost a different language. And so if you don't know how to read your policy, you don't know what you do or do not have. And so you need to work with an agent you can really trust in that. Another example of this is a photographer. I actually insure a lot of photographers, so this specific example comes up for them a lot. Is they've got $10,000 in most cases of camera equipment, and usually when I look at their policies, I do see $10,000 of equipment coverage, but most photographers are not operating out of their address for the photo shoots themselves. They're going on site, on location, so that's going to fall under your off-premise limit. And the default limit there is never enough unless the agent is aware that that's how they're using the equipment and writing it accordingly. So I always bump up that off-premise limit for my photographers because they need it. So that's another example of kind of some of the tangibles. And then as far as the liability, you touched on cyber liability already. That's a really important one for sure. I also tell people, you need your general liability if you have a physical location that people are going to, and your professional liability for any services you offer. On the professional liability, a lot of us think like, I'm not selling a good, so I don't need as much insurance. But the statistics again tell us 22% of all claims, the number one ranking claim, are client disputes. So that means those of us who are doing professional services actually need more coverage when it comes to this professional liability.
Mm. Wow. I mean, really, you are offering peace of mind. It's like, as business owners, we are responsible for so many facets of running a business. And I always talk to my clients about what to outsource, and going and getting an online policy and just running out there and just picking something quick and cheap is not the answer. Because just like you shared, the statistics alone are, enough to make sure that you're covering yourself properly. So I thank you for like just bringing awareness to that, helping us to remember this is a key piece, not to just do this when you start your business, to revisit this. How often do you recommend a small business revisit their insurance? Is this something you do yearly or every couple of years?
That's a good question. It does vary a little bit by the type of business. But really, what I talk to my clients about is I am here for you for a review as often as you need, but I want them to be aware of the key changes in their business that are going to mean they need to contact me and make me aware of it as well. So I reach out every year, but I want them to know if I've hired someone, I need to call Angela. If I have seen an increase in my profits, I need to call Angela. If I bought a new piece of equipment, anything over $1,000 is what I tell them, I need to call Angela. So there are definitely key times to make a point of reaching out. And you brought up the idea of, with this being a foundational piece, a key piece, the importance of not shopping online, but having an agent. I want to give an example on that as well.
I'd love that.
This is quite recent. I had a referral from a lawyer that I work with who helps write contracts for the clients and the business owners to work out those details. So this lawyer referred this woman to me, and she was like, yeah, I already got my quote online, but since you're being referred to me, I figured I might as well see if you can beat this online quote. Well, the truth is, I couldn't. My price was not better than that online quote, but it didn't matter because that online quote was all wrong.
Oh,
We
geez.
were actually writing with the same carrier. Eh, So if we're writing the same limits, the same discounts, so on and so forth, we should be coming up with the same price. And we weren't. And that's because she is a consultant on business processes. So she's a business process consultant. And her primary client is an IT firm. It was an IT policy, not a business consultant policy. So it was written for the wrong industry. Had something gone wrong, she was not going to have the coverage she needed. And several other key details were way off as well. So when you buy online, there's a lot of people there that are doing their very best, but you're going to talk to a different person every time you call in, and you're starting over every time, and you're getting a different answer every time. Whereas when you're working with an agent, you're going to talk to me or one of the few members of my team who have direct access to me every time. And if something comes up, I'm going to go to bat for you because I wrote that policy, so my own integrity is on the line with that.
Oh, that's so good to know. And those are just things that as business owners, we just don't think about because we rely on the experts. So that I love that. One thing, you and I met through a referral, and I feel like I just want to touch on your journey to being an entrepreneur. I love sharing the stories and have a passion for helping entrepreneurs. Did you always want to be an entrepreneur, or how did you end up owning your own agency? Can you kind of just give us the top line? I'm sure it's there's always a story behind everyone's journey, but I would love to hear how that came to be for you.
Yeah, I've always seen myself as an entrepreneur. When I was really young, I pictured owning like a little gift shop or something like that. And as time went on, I actually became a photographer. So I was a professional photographer for 10 years, loved it. But we just reached the point in our lives where it didn't fit the family real well, and I needed to do something different. So I put my resume out there, and farmers recruited me. And it's been a lot of fun for the past 8 years now with farmers.
Oh, good for you. So one of the things that I love that you do here in you and I are both in West Michigan, but you have created an online networking group for women business owners. And, in today's world, we are doing business with people outside of our immediate communities, and we are networking across the borders. And so the virtual networking has become very, I think, relevant and important. Will you share your reason behind starting that and tell us a little bit about your group called Swan?
Yeah, so for reasons, there's more than one, of course, like there's more than one reason for almost anything, right? So, as a creative person in a very non-creative industry, one, I needed to be able to use those creative pieces of myself, and so I needed that for just my own personal fulfillment. But also, we moved to this area at the same time that we were starting the business, so I did not have an established network, and I needed to get out and meet people. And truthfully, I'm a little bit of an introvert. So I was struggling in that area. I think a lot of things are born out of struggle, right? And so I just thought, okay, if traditional networking of going out into a crowd of people that I don't know and standing there awkwardly until it's time to leave is not working for me, what could I do differently? And so I created SWAN, which stands for Strong Women Arise Network. It is a Facebook group that's completely free to join. You're welcome to search for that and join. If you're in West Michigan, we have a West Michigan chapter. If you're not, we're definitely looking at opening some new chapters, so you can reach out to me. We'll have my contact information in the show notes. Um, but really, what we do is we focus on helping women to improve their mindsets and their skill sets so that they can achieve their dreams. And we do that through inspiration, education, and connection. So we are together online every day in the capacity that works for you, right? You can spend 30 seconds with us, or you can spend the whole day with us. And then we also do meet in person quite frequently as well, where we have some educational components, such as referral skills training or handling objections training on that. And then we have coffee, meet and greets, photo shoots, all sorts of fun things.
That's so important. And I want to thank you for creating that group. I am a member of that group and I really do enjoy the resources and also just the inspiration and motivation. As business owners, there's days when we're just feeling kind of blah or we're lacking that motivation or we're feeling a little beat down. Just, we don't have a boss over our heads telling us what we have to do that day. And when you can hop on a group like that, even just for, like you said, 30 seconds to a minute, I always get some kind of nugget every time I get on that. And I do make it a point to kind of hop on there once a day. So I appreciate you starting that group. I also love women supporting women. We are all in this together and we should not be competitive of each other. We should not be feel insubordinate to each other. We should be here building each other up. And so I really just love a community that does that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love seeing you participate. I do notice that you're there and it's like, oh, it's Jen. I
Well,
do have one more topic we need to hit on a moment. We talked about the three buckets of the tangibles, the liability, and the people, but we didn't get into the people piece at all.
oh,
So I do
please.
want to touch on that quickly. Um, if you have employees, you are required by law to have workman's comp insurance. Now, it used to be that if you had a very small business, you might be exempt from that. That's no longer the case. So that's one of those misconceptions out there that I like to make sure people are aware of. If you hire, you have to have workman's comp. And then, of course, you might think about some group benefits for them as well. That's a nice perk for your employees. They're called perks for a reason because they really do make a difference for your employees. But there's also something called key person or buy-sell life insurance. And you might think, why would I need life insurance in my business? But you really may. And so I want to kind of illustrate that example. So Jen, if we imagine that you and I are business partners, we co-own a business, if something ever happened to me, my husband or my son would inherit my share of the business. Well, think about it. You and my husband may really not be the best business partners just because you and I were, right? Maybe you two don't get along. Maybe he just does not have the passion for that business. Or with my son, maybe he's still a minor if it's him that inherits it, right? So this poses a problem for you because you have a business partner you didn't really want. Poses a problem for my heirs because they've got an asset that they can't really utilize. And so if we have a buy-sell agreement in place and we fund that buy-sell agreement with a life insurance policy, business can pay for the policy and we are both insured and we are the beneficiaries of that policy. Then if something happens to me, you have life insurance to buy my husband out of his share of the business. And that's best for both parties because now you own the whole business and he got that money in place of that asset to as my heir. So that's one more thing that I like to point out to people. If you co-own a business or if you have a key employee you can't get by without, you might want to think about some life insurance to meet those needs.
Wow. Okay. Of all the years I've been doing this and had different conversations, that is the first time I've ever had a or heard that. And like every partnership I know out there, I want them to come talk to you because that is huge. That is really powerful. So thank you for bringing that up and sharing that. So I would say that you have a wealth of knowledge. You are very resourceful and an excellent problem solver in meeting businesses with what they need. So I'm going to put your contact information in the comments and in the show notes for people to reach out to you. Is that something that you're open to and have time to evaluate where they're at? And
Yes, absolutely. My focus is on commercial insurance, and I have a whole team here. We have a member who focuses on the life insurance and a member who focuses on the personal lines, so things like your home and your auto. So you can look at everything all in one shop with us, and we can get you multi-policy discounts for all of those things. Whereas a lot of your carriers, they might be able to get you a home auto discount, but not necessarily a business auto discount, but we can. So definitely worth taking a look at what we can do for you. We love helping people first and foremost get the coverage that they really need. We try and think about what will you need when you have a claim. And then secondly, save some money when we can.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and your wealth of knowledge and just really breaking it down for us. Like I said, I always recommend business owners to outsource those things that they're not knowledgeable in. And this is an area that most of us are not. So I really appreciate you being a resource for our community. And I just want to thank you again for your time and just learning about your business. And of course, I love working with you and wish you tremendous success in your business going forward too.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer.
So thanks everyone for tuning in today, and please reach out to Angela with all your insurance questions. Obviously, she has the answers for you. And also reach out to me if I can help you build a better business. Like I said, I have 6 pillars that I take you through because I am here. I know what it's like. I've walked the talk. I owned a business for over 20 years and I know what it's like. And sometimes you just need an extra, brainstorming session or just some clarity or focus. And that's what I'm here to help you with. So thanks everyone. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.